Hello and welcome to this week's Q&A, the show where we go through your questions and talking points. From what we think of the situation at Bolton to reminiscing of the glory days under Paul Trollope, we've got plenty of questions to go through. I'm your host, Harley Thorne. I'm joined as always by Neno. Let's jump straight in. We start this week with a question from Andy Baxter. He says, even though it's contributing to the demise of our league and solidifying the EFL status as the Premier League's plaything, since the boycott hasn't deterred a lot of our fans, is it time to admit defeat and go to the stupid trophy? He couldn't have put it better. And, James Monteith also sent in a question that was very similar to this one.
No, absolutely not, basically. I don't care if in future we sell out every game in this trophy, which obviously will never happen. I will never go to a game in this trophy. I don't agree with the whole B team thing, and I get the fears about them coming into our leagues in the future, and I think that's a valid fear. But for me, it's not that. It's just I just don't care about this trophy at all, and I've just got better things to spend my money and time on a midweek evening than go into the leasing.com trophy games. And that name really doesn't help, does it? I mean, it was a joke as it was last season, but to put an actual website in front of it now has just turned it into more of a farce than it even was. And to be honest, my level of interest in this trophy is proven by the fact that right now we're playing Plymouth in it, and I've barely even checked to see, who we're playing, what lineup we're playing, how we're getting on. I know that Nichols has scored because before we started recording, you had a little celebration about it, but
a shocked look on my face.
I just really don't care, and so I know I won't admit defeat with this trophy because I think that it's just crap.
Is it? It seems like you're kind of focused on the fact that you don't care about it, rather than you're kind of boycotting to stand up to the league.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't help that I'm in Southampton because I struggle to travel for league games, let alone for games in this trophy. But I mean, even if I was in Bristol, I don't think I would go to these games because, I don't care. And but like I said, I do think that the B team thing is a real fear, especially with what's happening with Bolton and particularly Bury. The fact that we've got established Football League clubs facing real financial difficulty. And obviously not quite going out of business, but almost going out of business like Bury have. The fear is that we'll have clubs like that going bust and being replaced by B teams in the future, which is just a horrifying thought, really, for the future of the Football League as we know it at the moment. So I think there's many reasons to not go to this stupid trophy, as Baxter calls it.
Yeah, he put it very passionately. To be honest, I'm the same as you. I don't get anything from it. And I was speaking to a Southampton fan I know actually, and he was saying, "Oh, if you get to the final," this was last season, obviously. He was saying, if you get to the final, then obviously you're going to go. And I was like, I have no interest in going to the final. I genuinely didn't have any interest. If I was going to give up, I would have gone to the semi. I did watch it on the television.
Who did we even play in the semi? I can't remember now.
Sunderland.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. And I was hoping we lost that semi. I remember being sat at home wishing that we'd lose because I was just sick of it. Causes so much bickering between our own fan base, and I'm sure it does with fan bases all around the country. But you just see Rovers fans arguing on Twitter and the forum, etc., about the validity of the trophy and whether we should go or not, and whether the people that go are scabs and all this just bullshit that's just boring. I just can't be asked with it. So, yeah, as you can tell, I'm sitting on the fence with this one. Let me ask you the next one then, which has been sent in by Jack Lovering. And he says, can we do anything with Bennett now, or is he simply going to sit on the bench, sucking all the money out of the playing budget until his contract ends?
I've given my thoughts on Bennett before. But I think that now he's in the squad and we're not getting rid of him, then we've got to make use of him. We've tried him in the hole. I think that's probably the best bet. I can't see us using wingers for quite some time unless we have some kind of defensive injury crisis. I think there's no doubt that he has got that little bit of flair, that little bit of magic, just doesn't use it enough. You have to kind of have faith in the coaching staff to get the most out of him. There's obviously a player in there. He's never really lived up to his potential, but when he signed, there was very much a player that you'd heard of and he'd had previous success. I remember when he first signed for Pompey, actually, and watching the Football League show, and I think it was the first game of the season. I watched him absolutely thump into absolute screamers at Fratton Park, and haven't forgot him since then. That was probably the only 2 goals he scored that season, but I think there's got to be something in there. And like you say, Jack, the other option is that he sits on the bench, sucking all the money out of the playing budget. So I think we've got to give him a chance, don't you?
I think I was listening to another football podcast earlier, actually, and they were talking about West Ham and Philippe Andersson at West Ham. And one of the people on that podcast described him as a YouTube player, a YouTube compilation player. And that is, as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought of Carl Bennett, because that's exactly how I'd describe him, I think. I think that's perfect for him because he's quite easy on the eye to watch. He's got quite a nice low centre of gravity, and he can use body feints. It's true. And he uses sort of body feints to go past a man and create a bit of space sometimes. And he can play some nice passes every now and then and do a few step overs. And it's the sort of thing that on a YouTube compilation, you would look at that and think, bloody hell, I hope we go for him if you're the fan of another team. But then obviously those are only little bits. And when you look at his performances as a whole, it's probably only 1 in, 10 maybe, where you get a sort of solid 90-minute performance out of him, and the rest of them are just little bits here and there. And it's just not enough to justify the fact that he's one of the highest, if not the highest earner in the squad. So I think until he goes, when his contract's up at the end of next season, unless someone comes in from in January, then I think that we need to try and use him in the hole, like you said. But I mean, yeah, he is going to sit on the bench and suck up our money, to be blunt. So
I'd go as far to say, though, that have we actually? I mean, we've got to use him in the hole now, haven't we? We clearly are lacking someone in there. Whether he's performing or not, he's going to have to be tried there, right?
Yeah, I mean, seeing as we signed no midfield players who can offer a bit of creativity, then obviously we do need to use what we've got. And when you look at what we've got, probably the only players you can think of who can maybe do something a bit different from the others in there is Bennett, Nichols, or Sercombe when he's back fit. So yeah, I think we do probably have to try and get a bit out of Bennett, playing ahead of 2 of the other 3. You could maybe put Upson and Agogo sort of holding a little bit, and Bennett just ahead of them behind a couple of strikers. And maybe that would give us a bit more. I could see maybe GC using that in home games against weaker opposition, where he wants a little bit of creativity and more attacking flair in there, rather than 3 sort of holding midfielders. So yeah, I can see that being used sometimes. It's a shame that Swindon didn't come in for him this summer, or apparently they did. We rejected a bid, but I think if he had gone, I don't know why, but I think if he had gone, then I think we would have got in 1 or 2 before the window shut. I think probably our lack of business was all to do with the fact that Bennett didn't go. So that's a shame, because it kind of feels like he needs the move as well, because I think he's going to spend the next year frustrated and getting very little football. So it wasn't really a win for anyone. But there we go.
Well, he's got to put himself in the shop window now, right? So if, he's got to be better. He's got to be for his own career, and hopefully he can be. But I think we've gone over that one enough, and I think we can confirm that whether he's on the bench or not, he is sucking all the money out of the playing budget. A great shame. Next question's from our very own Max Alderson. Hi, Max. We also got a question that's very similar from David Williams. Max's question is, with Bolton signing a number of experienced Championship players on loan, how do you think the league and Rovers will react now certain teams could be seen to have been given an easy 3 points and 3 goal difference?
Am I going with this one? I assume I am.
It sounds like you want it.
So I think the league will probably react by doing nothing, because I'm not really sure what they can do, to be honest. It's a bit of an unfortunate circumstance with how they were during most of the window, i.e. broke and in administration, and how they ended the window, having just been taken over and seemingly with a bit of cash to splash. So I'm not really sure what can now be done about that. I mean, I get the fact that the teams who have already played Bolton have got an easy 3 points against them, but what does that mean that you do for everyone else? You can't just give everyone in the league 3 points because 2 or 3 teams have played Bolton and got an easy win. So I don't really think the league can do anything. Not that I think the EFL have covered themselves in much glory at all with the Bolton and Bury situations, but I don't think there's much they can do. And the second part of the question, how do I think Rovers will react? I think Rovers will react by being beaten home and away by Bolton. And Bolton will then join Wycombe in my group of non-local clubs who I despise, because it will be sickening to lose to them.
I think Bolton have made themselves disliked by a lot of Football League fans with this. But one thing I do want to say is, if you look at it black and white, and like you said, the league won't do anything. I mean, they haven't actually broken any rules, right? They have essentially played 2 squads, well, not played yet, but will play 2 squads that were available to them at the time. They didn't have the money to sign players. They got the money and they signed the players, and now they're going to play them. There's no way that you can argue with that, really. I think what is really important is the financial control. I mean, completely ignore the fact that they've now signed players. It shouldn't be about the easy games on the pitch that happened. It should be about how can they go from broke to wealthy enough to sign these players so quickly. That's the condition that needs to be added for future, and I think.
Well, I read on our forum by obviously a GasCast put on there that apparently the new owners at Bolton have taken out 2 £20 million loans already to help, well, partly to help fund these new signings. So, I mean, that already sends warning bells, or it should do anyway, because that just sounds dodgy to me.
I mean, when I was told that, obviously it was, well, here we go again. But I'm also thinking, who on earth is the lender that is giving out £40 million to Bolton? I mean, as far as a potential person, you're not going to get that back, are you? I mean, who's running that business? I'm not convinced of it at all.
No, it's madness, isn't it? But I mean, on the Bolton thing, going off on a tiny tangent with them, I think that a lot of people have a problem with them because of how they reacted on deadline day with their signings. How they hyped it up and teased each signing. I think it should have, because like you said, if Rovers were in the same situation, you wouldn't go, oh, no, I don't want us to sign any players on deadline day because we've spent the rest of the window in administration and broke. So now we've got money. I still don't want us to sign it because that would be ethically wrong and all this stuff. If it was Rovers, we would want us to do exactly the same as Bolton did and go out and strengthen heavily so that we have a better season and have a chance of staying up, which if they didn't go and do what they did on deadline day, they would be down by January, I imagine, because they were playing a team of kids and they were postponing games and all this sort of stuff. So if it were Rovers, I'd want them to do the exact same as Bolton, but I think they could have been a little bit more, or downplayed the signings a little bit, because it was a bit galling seeing them announce, who was it, Will Buckley, and just players who are miles out of our league, when and knowing that they're going to tear us apart twice this season when, they've played kids against the teams they've played so far. That is difficult to take, but I don't think they've done anything wrong, like you said. So, it's just one of those difficult situations, isn't it, I guess? So let me ask you this one then by Mike Lee, who has said, with no further business done in the transfer window for Rovers, is the squad strong enough to finish top half this season?
It's a really hard squad to judge because it's not a squad that's going to win much based on quality, I don't think. I don't know if that's an absolute bombshell that I've just dropped and it's really harsh. I hope not.
I think at the moment you're obviously talking about the squad from now until January, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen in January onwards. So the current squad,
I think it's hard to judge because clearly, as Graham has alluded to very clearly, we're all about the character and the kind of getting stuck in and doing our defensive duties and and working hard to get a win, which I'd argue is the Rovers' way. So I'm quite interested to see how it goes. But in terms of quality and balance, it's hanging in the balance, isn't it? I mean, I don't think that we're a top half side, but I do think that we've got enough to be quite clear of the relegation zone. Personally, I don't expect much on the pitch this season. I actually I'm not plugging this on purpose, but I wrote an article to that effect on the Bristol Live. I said in that I don't think that we should be looking on the pitch this season, because I think off the pitch is far more important, and I think that the squad resembles that thought, to be honest. What about you?
I mean, I agree with you. I do still look at the current squad, though. My main fear is that I do still look at the squad and think, if JCH is injured for even 1 or 2 months, not even a serious long-term injury, but even if he misses a month or two, which in League One can be, 7, 8 games, a fair chunk of the season, I really, really struggle to see where the goals are going to come from. Especially playing a 3-5-2, which we've talked about, and is a system I do like with our current squad. But in that formation, you're essentially playing 5 defenders and 3 defensive-ish midfielders. So you're really reliant on those 2 strikers to get the goals anyway. And if those 2 strikers don't have JCH in them, I struggle to see where we're going to get enough goals, really, to win many games. Because Nichols is on a nice little run now, including scoring tonight against Plymouth. But I mean, obviously, we can't be sold on the fact that he's gone on a nice little run after 80 odd games of barely scoring. So we need to see a bit more to have full faith in him. And Smith and Adebayo, I don't think we've seen enough to say that they can regularly score goals at this level at all. So that's a big area of concern for me, because obviously JCH has also missed the whole of pre-season essentially, and even though he may look fairly sharp now, he must still be playing catch-up fitness-wise. And when players are in that sort of state where they're catching up but being used regularly like he is, then they're more prone to injury. They have to be. So I don't think it's even an unrealistic thing to say that in a couple of months' time, JCH could get an injury that keeps him out for a month or two. And I think we would struggle during that period if he did.
But let me put you on the spot here. So you're saying the depth isn't enough for a top half finish, but if with a fit Johnson, Clark, Harris, and no injuries, touch wood, do you think that the quality is top half?
No, I don't think the quality is top half. No, I think we'd be doing well to come upper bottom half. I think that would be a good finish for the squad as it currently stands, and I think probably most Rovers fans would call that a successful season after how last season went. Because I think, our lack of business, you kind of, on one hand, is disappointing, but then we've both said we look at the squad now and we think we're probably too good or too solid, or however you want to put it, to go down. So why would the owners give any more money to spend? Because we're not going to go up, we're not going to go down, hopefully. And that's just how it is. And that is a successful season after what was a fairly dreadful season last season. So, yeah, happy days, I guess.
Let's move on to the next one, because that's enough of us being quite depressing. I swear that we're not negative at all. I think we're relatively happy and somewhat looking forward to the future. So I don't understand why on these we always seem to just be completely pulling apart the squad, and it just never feels like we're smiling. But yeah, we'll be positive soon. Here's an opportunity for you to be positive about other teams.
I can do that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, Joe Moon sent in a question. Which League One team had the best transfer window? Some interesting signings for the likes of Wickham and Blackpool. I'm giving you this one, Nino, because frankly, I trust your preparation much more than mine.
Your preparation being zero, right?
Exactly.
So in terms of the best League One transfer windows, I think the teams that come to mind are sort of Shrewsbury, Blackpool, like Joe mentions. Fleetwood, I think, have made some good signings and will finish in the playoffs. Coventry, I think, will be there or thereabouts with playoffs. The two that sort of stand out to me are one which Joe mentioned, Wickham, because they've made a few permanent signings that you'd think would be above their level. without being disrespectful to them. Actually, no, being disrespectful for them because it's Wickham. But people such as, David Wheeler from QPR, I'd have happily had him in the squad. I think he'd improve our squad massively. Josh Parker, they signed from Charlton, who isn't a goal scorer. I wouldn't say he's a striker. He's not going to get them loads of goals, but he's a very good, hard-working striker for another player, such as Paul Smith, who they signed from QPR to play off of. I think those two could make a good sort of little and large combo for them up front. And the one which really caught the eye was the one they made on deadline day, the loan signing of Rolando Aarons from Newcastle. And I think everyone's just pretty astonished that Wickham managed to pull that off, to be honest. On paper, it just looks like an incredible signing. And again, someone who would have transformed us in terms of the options he'd have given us as an out-and-out talented winger. So definitely Wickham I'm impressed with. And the other one is a really obvious one, but it's Lincoln. And I think that for them, their recruitment was particularly impressive because obviously not only have they come up a division, so they're trying to improve the quality in the team whilst maintaining the sort of squad harmony, which was a big part of their promotion last season. But the Cowley brothers have also really transformed their style of play from last season when they were quite a direct team who used to play it up to Matt Reed, that huge striker, and play off of him. And they've gone much more possession-based. And they've signed players to fit that style. And as you can see from their early results, they've obviously done it pretty well. So they've sort of ticked 2 boxes during the summer. And they've signed people like Jack Payne, George Grant from Forest, and Tyler Walker, who scored a load of goals at Mansfield last season. And they've just made some really, really impressive signings, all of which I'd have taken here again. So I think, that was particularly impressive. But unfortunately for Lincoln, it sounds like the Cowley brothers may be off to Sheffield Wednesday. So
I can't get over the Cowley brothers as a reference. I just think of like some kind of mystery programs, like the Cowley brothers. 2 brothers with a thirst for the beautiful game.
Yeah, it's on After a Touch of Frost on weekdays at 2 p.m. on Quest.
It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Quest.
So yeah, I think those are the clubs that stand out for me. There's some others as well that I think have had better windows than us, perhaps, but not that I think we've had a bad window. But yeah, there are quite a few ones, and there was a lot of decent deals done on deadline day by League One clubs, which was quite difficult to watch as we announced nothing. So that's my thoughts anyway. So I'll ask you this one by Connor Carter, who says, we've kind of touched on this already, but would you be happy to avoid relegation quite comfortably this season and then have a decent cup run? Can't remember the last time we even got into the FA Cup 3rd round.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would. Like I said, I wrote about this the other day, and I think I don't think realistically with our current infrastructure off the pitch, there's any point in trying to push on the pitch. I don't think we're not in a position to go up. So there's almost no point past security. You can't gamble on finishing 2 places above the relegation zone. You need to be aiming for top half of bottom half, really, or mid-table. But I think a cup run would be fantastic. It gets the fans up for it. It brings in new fans, the finance side of it. I don't know the numbers, obviously, but it always gets spoke about by others. So I think I really just want us to be sensible this season and allow us to develop off the pitch. Hopefully things get sorted out with the takeover rumours sooner rather than later. And a cup run would be very tasty. I really fancy a trip to Anfield as well. I mean, I know that we're inevitably at best going to end up with Brighton away. It's funny I said that, given it. Obviously, I know where my brain's got that one from. But yeah, I'd love a big away day. Love it. But
it would really help us financially as well, wouldn't it? I think you look at some clubs, such as Lincoln, actually, who they recruit really well, but also they seem to go on a decent cup run every few years and inevitably end up getting a big side. And we know how much of a money spinner they are for clubs at our level. And then we can see that obviously pays off. by the likes of the players that they're bringing in this summer, whilst we're struggling.
Yeah.
So I think we really could do with a decent FA Cup round, and getting someone like Liverpool away, I think it would do majorly good things for our budget for January. And it just creates a buzz around the club, doesn't it? And that FA Cup run that we got, I don't know what year it was now. Was it 2007, 2008 when we got to the quarterfinals and got West Brom? Obviously, we ended up getting hammered by West Brom, but the whole run in general, it just creates a buzz around the club like nothing else, really.
And it catches younger fans as well, definitely. I think you look at on the pitch right now and the dull stuff we've said about how we're kind of accepting where we are for now. Kids aren't unfortunately going to care about us waiting for the infrastructure, They're not going to turn up and say, well, Graham's being sensible, he's built a mid-table side. They want to see exciting football, which is unlikely, unfortunately, or they want to see something like a cup run, and that's all. I think that is unfortunately all we can really hope for. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to explain to a 6-year-old gashead why Rovers are at their ceiling on the pitch right now, isn't it? It's just not a conversation that is going to go well. And you're right. They do. We'll be hooked in by stuff like a good cup run and playing a big team at the Mem or away and being on TV. Inevitably, when you get far in a cup as a lower league side, you're on TV, and that brings in money and increases the profile of the club. And it's just all good stuff, really. And it's stuff that we haven't had for a while now. So it would be fantastic to have a good cup run like that.
I've got a question here from Adam Dunlop, who said, surely it's too early in the season for GC to say his players are exhausted. What do you think of that? I mean, I think he's saying that as a bit of not just maybe a public excuse to the fans, really. I think he's basically saying his squad is thin, and he's trying to make that clear to everyone, which I don't disagree with.
No. No, it is early in the season to be saying that, but you're right. The squad is thin. We're playing a 3-5-2 with 3 centre midfielders, and they're the only 3 fit centre midfielders at the club, so they're having to play every game. The same with the centre backs. So, the squad is thin, so I imagine the players probably are pretty tired. But also, I think that as well as I know what you mean by the excuse, but I think as well as that, the timing was interesting because he said that before the window shut. And I think it was also a little bit of a final plea to the owners, an indirect plea to the owners to release a bit of funds to bring in 1 or 2 more players on deadline day, which obviously didn't happen. But it came across to me that GC was doing something that Darryl used to do a lot, which was use his interviews with the local press to send messages to the owners about wanting more money to spend on players. And I think that's partly the reason that GC said that, because he wanted to get the message across to the owners that the squad's thin, it needs more reinforcements, or else we're going to have a tired squad who are out on their feet until January.
I don't think he's using it as a way of going to the owners. I think he's using it as a way of saying it to the fans. I think I've touched upon before, I think he was kind of put in as a bit of a yes man. And I think that, and I don't blame them for doing that in some ways, but I think he's fully aware of his situation. He knows he's got unlucky in the market, and I think he accepts that's what the case is. And I think if anything, he's saying it to prepare fans for that, to kind of cushion the blow should he have injuries. And it's probably worth saying at this point that tonight Agogo's gone off, Upson's gone off, and Nichols has gone off.
Agogo's gone off as well, injured?
Yes, supposedly so. So, I mean, if that were true and they were badly injured, then that would be. I mean,
we wouldn't be able. We'd have to change the formation because the 3-5-2 we've been playing, 2 of the centre midfielders have just gone off injured. So
we haven't got depth, and I think that's what Graham's really saying is he's got a small squad, he's got to work with it, and he's just letting us know and getting his excuses in. And to be honest, I don't necessarily blame him for that. Normally I would, and I wouldn't like it, but I think he's right.
Yeah, I agree.
On a lighter note, Joe Mitchell's asked a bit of a different question. We get to stop talking about the current negativity. He asks, who were your favourite players growing up? He says his were Carl Saunders and Brian Parkin.
Why don't you answer this one first, seeing as I took the last one?
Be completely honest, my first favourite player was Lewis Haldane. I recall one of my first games before having a season ticket was the final game of the season. I think it was Dagenham and Redbridge or Rushden and Diamonds. I think it was Rushden actually. And I believe Lewis Haldane smashed two in. That's all it takes when you're 10, 11 years old to get a favourite player, right? It's the player that happens to score the goals on your first game. So, yeah, and from that game on, I was hooked and I got a season ticket the next season and we got promoted. So Lewis Haldane played a massive part in that. He was brilliant that season. He was good for a few seasons after that. So he was definitely mine. And after that, like Disley, I won't be reminded of the time I got Dominic Blizzard's name on the back of my shirt. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's and obviously Ricky Lambert, but I mean, does it even count mentioning Ricky
Boring.
Lambert? Yeah. What about you?
So I've probably got two. Firstly, Disley, mainly because he was playing when I was young and first started going, and just always used to giggle at his chant because obviously it's incredibly rude and it was just funny when you were young. And my dad always used to change it to "He's a ginger man and he scores when he can." Just to
that's good. That's good.
I know.
What's wrong with that?
I preferred it. Yeah, it was the PG version of the chant. I quite liked it. So, yeah, Disley probably for the chant really. And then the second one was Joker 4, who I don't really.
I remember you liked him.
Yeah, I don't even really know why I liked him, but I just loved Joker 4. I think probably he was a bit of an enigma because he always used to miss really easy chances, and then he'd score some absolute belters. I remember one against Leeds where he flipped it over two defenders' heads and volleyed it in at the Mem, and he just Swindon away where he lobbed the keeper. He was just one of those players who was so frustrating because you kind of think if he did that every game, he'd be in the Championship and above probably, but. So I think, I loved seeing his flashes of brilliance from Kafur.
Another thing about Joker 4 was that he was always a bit of a thorn in our sides for Bournemouth, I believe. And I remember when we signed him, it was kind of, hold on, what's going on here then? We've actually signed someone I'm fully aware of. And, it's one of those. A bit of a Carl Bennett, actually, I suppose, in that way.
He also had a really enjoyable style to watch, I thought. He was quite a unique player because obviously he was tiny. He was probably only 5'5", 5'6" or something, but he was so stocky and strong, and he used to back into defenders and just stick his massive ass out and just hold the ball up. And he was just brilliant at that. And then he could stick his bum into people, hold a defender off. It was twice his height, and then he'd swivel and spin around him, and he had great pace. And I'm just drooling about the thought of Kafur, to be honest. So there we go.
That's not a bad choice, I don't think. Oh, you were also a huge fan of Jeff Hughes. I remember that.
Jeff Hughes, yeah. I always maintained Jeff Hughes should have been played as a midfielder, as in centrally rather than on the wing. But I loved Hughes. I thought technically he was just insane. Although saying that, one of my not my first away games, but one of the early away games I went to was Gillingham away, where we were absolutely hopeless and we lost 1-0 to a late goal. And I gave Hughes so much shit as he was walking off the pitch because he was one of those players who, on a bad day for the team, he just looked incredibly lazy. He wasn't. He was sort of like an Ozil type player where he just had this sort of languid style about him where he just sort of trotted around.
Do you think he's going to be in any way insulted by you calling him an Ozil type player?
I think he'd be quite happy with that, wouldn't you? Yeah.
I think you've done him a massive...
Jeff listens to this, his head is just swollen to about 4 times the size. So yeah, that one's for you, Jeff. I hope you enjoyed that.
It's probably a good time to move on to the next question then, which is from Matt. And he said, after seeing so many of the 06-07 promotion heroes at the Martin Belston Memorial event, who do you think was the better team, peak Trollope or peak DC? Now, before you answer this one, just want to say what a cracking job Ash Belston obviously did. We've got some stuff coming up soon. I believe Max spoke with a few players on the day, and it sounds like it was a brilliant event. No doubt a lot of you listeners went. Cracking work, and it sounds like a lot of money was raised, so well done there.
Seconded.
Looking at the squads, Nino, I'm sure that you want to take this over because you did do the preparation.
I did, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, it depends what you'd call peak Trollope for a start, because I think that maybe a lot of fans would think back to the 06-07 team, the one that got promoted from League Two, obviously. But I'd probably call peak Trollope the 08-09 League One season when we finished 11th and only about 10 or so points outside the playoffs. So, if we're taking that team, I'm just going to read out the lineup from the sort of players that played the most over that season in a 4-3-3. So Phillips in goal, Pipe, Coles, Elliott, Lescott across the back, Hughes, Lyons, and Campbell, three in midfield, and then Lambert, Kufor, and Duffy up top. And you found the stats actually from that season for that front three, where Lambert scored 29 goals, obviously. Kufor got 11 and Duffy got 13. So in that front three that season, that's a hell of a lot of goals.
Yeah, and then you look at Hughes and Lyons behind, who are on like four goals each at least. There are so many goals in that team. I mean, I was pretty astounded when we put this down to paper because that is exciting. I must have been buzzing over that summer for progress.
Yeah. And
What
then
happened?
yeah, and then we're looking at peak DC. So we've taken the team from the 16-17 season when we finished 10th, only 7 points off the playoffs, which I believe is our highest finish in League One for a long, long time. DC always used to bang on about that, didn't he?
It's actually I've seen it on paper again. That's pretty ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've got Lumley in goal, James Clark, Lockyer, Sweeney, and Brown across the back. Bodin on the right, Mansell and Lyons in the middle, Montano on the left, and then Matty and Ellis up top. So, I mean, what's your thoughts when you look at those two? Which do you think would beat the other if they came head to head?
It's really
And
tough,
obviously, we're
isn't
talking
it?
about if they came head to head when the 08-09 team was in its peak, because looking at Lambert from the Martin Belston Memorial match, he needs about 7 pre-seasons in a row just to get back to anything like the sort of shape he'd need to be in
Yeah.
to play a football game again. But yeah.
I mean, both teams have got Chris Lyons in them, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think it is so tough. It's so tough. I'm just staring at it and I'm changing my mind every few seconds. I think.
I mean, before we started recording, you said that you thought the DC team essentially shat all over the Trollope. But I get the feeling that.
But then we went back a season and we got this.
Mm.
This is a slightly different team, and I think. Oh, with that, yeah. I mean, it has to be the 08-09, doesn't it? With Lambert, Kafour, and Duffy all notching over 10 goals. Lambert on nearly 30. That is sensational, and it's hard to find much of a weak link in there, really. This is a very good side, isn't it?
So if you were doing a combined 11, would any of the peak DC side get into the peak Trollope one, do you think?
I think
Bodin surely must get in there.
I think James Clark and Brown might give Pipe and Lescott a run for their money. Coles and Elliott, maybe Lockyer and Elliott would be the centre back pairing. Bowden in for Hughes is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it pains me
it's got to be Bowden. It's got.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mansell and Campbell are very similar, really, very similar.
Yeah, they're the sort of players that if you put them together, it would just be horrendous because they'd be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, so I think it is the 08-09 team that wins it for me purely on the just that crazy strike force. That is just insane.
You've got to probably say that the Snake gets into the 08-09 team, though. As much as I love Kufor, you've got to have Taylor in there for Kufor.
Well, or for Duffy, probably.
Or for Duffy. Yeah, or for Duffy.
I think for Duffy. But, I mean, yeah, without going into player by player, because it's not great listening, I imagine. I think it's 08-09 for me. I've gone with that one. What about you?
Yeah, I probably agree. Yeah, that it is a tough one. I'd love to see it. I'd absolutely love to see it. But it's probably 08-09 pips it for me just. But I don't know if that's just a nostalgic thing.
Well, I mean, no doubt in 10 years' time, Ash Belston will 100% have these two playing against each other.
Yeah.
Working his magic. We all look forward to it.
Definitely.
I think that's enough for this evening. We hope you enjoyed this Q&A episode. If you did, please do consider becoming a patron and supporting our running costs and help us grow. You can find information on gascastpodcast.co.uk, including information on how to subscribe if you don't already. And if you don't already, I mean, why not? Come on. You've made it this far in this episode. You've got to want to subscribe. Also, we have an exclusive interview with Alfie Kilgore. It was brilliant to sit down with him. What a nice guy. Check it out on the website, gascastpodcast.co.uk again. But that's all for now. Thanks for listening, and up the gas.
Up the gas.